being translated in Dari and Pashto. So if you'd like to hear the event in either language, just click on the globe at the bottom of your screen and you'll be able to hear it in either language. So why is today so important and why are we doing this event now? Well, 2 years ago today, August 15th, the Taliban took control of Kabul and thus assumed power in Afghanistan. It is a day that most of you participating in this event remember very well because it changed the course of many people's lives and indeed the trajectory of an entire country. My name is Devin Cohn. I'm the Senior Advocate for Women and Girls at Refugees International. And Refugees International is an independent advocacy organization that advocates for life-saving assistance, human rights, and protection for displaced people and promotes solutions to displacement crises. We believe that people experiencing displacement must be at the center of the movement to advance solutions, which is why we are hosting this panel today, featuring some incredible Afghan women, all of whom are now displaced from their country. We are also fortunate enough to work in coalition with other partner organizations. 2 of these organizations are co-sponsoring this event, Mina's List and the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security. Mina's List is an NGO focused on advancing women's political leadership and participation globally. They have worked with Afghan women leaders for many years, and since the Taliban takeover, Mina's List has been instrumental in helping countless Afghan women access safety, opportunities, and platforms to share their voices with decision makers. We are so happy to have them partner with us. Our other co-sponsor is the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace and Security. The Institute is particularly active on Afghanistan. Through its Onward for Afghan Women initiative, it equips Afghan women leaders who have been forced to flee with opportunities to continue their advocacy on behalf of Afghan women and girls. And advocacy on behalf of Afghan women and girls is as important now as it ever was. One of the main reasons why today, August 15th, 2 years ago, is so momentous is that ever since then, the Taliban have systematically restricted and denied women's basic human rights. In just 2 years, the Taliban have issued more than 75 edicts governing virtually everything about the lives of Afghan women, from what they can wear, what they can learn, if they can work, where they can go, and more. For these reasons, and due to targeted persecution, hundreds of thousands of Afghan women have been forced to flee Afghanistan. We know about the relatively small numbers of women who were evacuated to the United States, but it is important for us to recognize that Afghan women are all over the world in various states of safety and precarity. The international community has failed to provide a unified standard approach to assisting Afghan women and granting them international protection. And for Afghan women who are in the US, the path to integration has many challenges. So in short, 2 years on from that fateful day, there are huge numbers of Afghan women still in limbo around the world. There's a lot of work yet to be done, and there is, as always, a lot to still learn. So on that note, we are so fortunate to have 4 accomplished Afghan women who are just that, all around the world. They will share their experiences and insights so that we can learn, and ultimately so that we can all more effectively advocate for changes that will improve the lives of displaced Afghan women. I first want to introduce Salma Niazi. Salma Niazi is an Afghan female journalist and the founder of the Afghan Times. Salma is a dedicated advocate for women's rights in Afghanistan and during exile. With a team of Afghan women journalists, the Afghan Times actively works to support and empower Afghan women, both within the country and beyond its borders. Second, I want to introduce Shabnam Khalilair. Shabnam worked as a senior journalist in Afghanistan and attended the Faculty of Journalism and Communication in Kabul. In 2020, she joined the Office of the President of Afghanistan, where she experienced firsthand the collapse of the former government of Afghanistan from inside the presidential palace. She's now a graduate student at Oklahoma University and lives in Norman, Oklahoma. We now have Palwasha Hassan. Palwasha is the Senior Technical and Program Director at Mina's List, a former senior fellow at Georgetown's Institute for Women, Peace and Security, and served as the Executive Director of the Afghan Women's Educational Center from 2016 to 2021. Palwasha has over 26 years of experience managing and leading complex projects in the fields of gender, development, humanitarian aid, and peace building. In addition to her work in Afghanistan, she has experience working in Pakistan, Iran, and Central Asia. She has facilitated regional dialogues among civil society to promote human rights, peace, and democracy in South Asia, and has pioneered several initiatives to uplift women's rights, democracy, and peace building. And finally, we have Dr. Khalida Noorzai. Dr. Noorzai is an Afghan dentist, university lecturer, and women's rights activist. She was the head of stomatology faculty and had her own dental clinic. She fled Afghanistan in November 2021 with her husband and 2 young sons. She currently lives in a refugee camp in Thessaloniki, Greece, and is waiting for her resettlement case to the United States to be processed. Now that we have made all the introductions, I want to get into some questions for our panelists. I will first ask some questions, then we will leave some time at the end for audience members to ask questions through the chat function. So first to you, Palwasha. You, like many other Afghan women, have had to leave your country. Can you tell us a little bit more about your life now and the work you are doing?
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. The question, can you please repeat your question?
Yes, you, like many other Afghan women, have had to leave your country. Can you tell us a little bit more about your life now and the work you are doing?
Sure. 2 years back, I left Afghanistan, and as you already gave an introduction to my background, I've been working for more than 2 decades on women's rights and women empowerment back in the country. And that was one of our biggest wish, that women could be an important part of the peace and stability in the country. Unfortunately, on 15 August, last 2 years back, with the coming of Taliban, we went to an historical setback inside the country. And I had to leave Afghanistan like many other women. And here in US, I like many other refugee women, had a lot to face, to have the ability to settle down in this country. I would like to appreciate many support that have been extended to us, but I think the amount of torture and trauma that the process of transition had is still marking on our heads and our ability to fully function and survive and integrate in the society as such.
Thank you so much. Shabnam, I'm going to turn to you and ask you the same question. Can you tell us a little bit more about your life now that you've left Afghanistan, and what you're studying and what you're working on and how you're continuing your life in the US?
Good morning to everyone. Thanks for having me in this panel. Well, 2 years ago, as you mentioned before, I was working first as a journalist. Then the last year, I joined the Office of Afghanistan President. Then everything like changed overnight, and we had to lift our everything, our belongings, our career, family, then have to move here. I mean, we had no choice but to leave the country. Now it has been like 2 years, and 2 years passed, and like I consider myself a fortunate woman, because here in the United States also I got the opportunity to continue my studies now that I'm a graduate student at the University of Oklahoma. I have that chance to continue my studies and also hope for a brighter future. But I know that there has been a lot of changes. I mean, it's different to be in your country working and moving to a new place and starting everything from the scratch.
Yes, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I think that's, again, one of the points of this panel, is to understand kind of how starting over feels and what your process has been. So I'm going to turn to Dr. Noorzai. Can you hear me, Dr. Khalida? Okay. Yes, Dr. Khalida, can you tell me a little bit more about your life now in Greece, and a little bit more about what you're doing while you're waiting in Greece? You're on mute, I think. Can you hear me? Dr. Khalida,
Yes, yes.
can you hear me? Did you hear the question?
Sorry again.
The question was, can you tell us a little bit more about your life now that you've left Afghanistan and are in Greece?
Yes, I left Afghanistan 2 years ago, and I'm living in Thessaloniki, in the Greece, with my husband and 2 children. And we live in the one like building in the Thessaloniki, and we do paid, and we're waiting for the processing until
Are you able to work at all in Greece, or are you just waiting at this point?
Yes, I'm a worker with the MVI, Medical Volunteer International, for 8 months, and now I'm didn't work, just at home, at room, no home.
Well, we're so happy you're here, and I know it's difficult for you to connect. I'm going to turn the same question over to Salma. Salma, you, like many other Afghan women, have had to flee your country as well. And so can you tell us a little bit more about the work you're doing and your life now in Pakistan?
سلام ټولو ته وړاندې کوم. سلمان یزیمه، افغان ژورنالیست. کله چې افغانستان کې په 2021 د اګست په 15مه طالبانو واک ته ترلاسه کړو او په ښځو مختلف بندیزونه ولګول شو. ځینې مېرمنې د خطر سره مخ شولې، ځینې شکنجه سولې، ځینې بندیانې شوې. نو همدغه علت و چې موږ خپل هېواد پرېښودو او کډوال شو.
Thank you so much, Salma. Pawasha, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, as you integrate into a new country, you've been in the US for about 2 years. What are some of the biggest challenges you have found yourself and that your community that you've worked with has found? And what are some positive things that you were surprised to find in the US?
Thank you, Devon. I think today is a very emotional day for all of us. So sorry if we are kind of like forgetting what to reflect and what not, but I think my 2 years of experience has been a lot of positive and a lot of personal setbacks than emotional situation that we had in this process of transitioning in life. I personally have been 3 times displaced in my life because conflict in Afghanistan is going for last more than 4 decades. And that is huge when you start your early age, your childhood, and then you start each time from scratch. It's not an easy process. And at this time of my life, starting a new life hasn't been easy. Just to accommodate yourself emotionally into the new environment. I was familiar with US, I've been traveling before, but I think it's altogether a different issue when you are responsible for a home, for a life, for a new place, and finding yourself in a new competitive environment for work. But above all, like it was not an immigration by choice. It has been under very difficult and different circumstances. I worked all my life on issues which was dear to my heart, I've been working closely with women to make that change possible. At then one moment, you feel like you lost everything. And to work on that kind of situation, you feel like you simply lost everything. And it's not an easy feeling. And your position also changing to yourself, because for all these years I've been working with other women to help them be empowered. And today I'm in a situation that, or 2 years back, I've been a refugee myself and others were helping me. I really been astonished by the level of generosity, love and affection that I received from American society. The people who were our neighbors, the people who volunteered, especially those women who volunteered, they have been very nice and kind and supportive. They tried to help us in every bit. That was something, I think, a different side of America that I found, because every time I came to US, I was more busy and engaged in political or let's say issues and policies which was affecting my country and women in my country. But this time I was meeting women who were not concerned with anything like that, but they were concerned how we settle better in this country. And I really like to thank them from my heart. And but at the personal level, sometimes the emotional and the traumatic exposure that we had over years in the conflict, and especially the last one was kind of like blowing you away with everything you had in place. That's not easy, and it is not help. It is draining from your energy to be fully functional and the way you want to be. Give your 100% to your new work, to your new job, to your new life. It is not like that. It's no more normal. I would say that I think Afghan refugees or the new arrival need more support with a lot of things. And one of it is definitely emotional and maybe a psychosocial support that help them to integrate fully in a new society and community.
Thank you for bringing that up, Hawasha. I will say that with all the Afghan refugees I've met in various countries, that is one thing that, like you said, is important for everyone. I mean, wherever they are, and I've been hearing that over and over again. Shabnam, I'd love to turn to you and hear a little bit more about your experience integrating into the U.S. and you know what the challenges have been, also what the positives have been. But you know, I know you left many people back in Afghanistan, so perhaps you can talk a little bit more about how you've integrated yourself into the United States.
Well, one of the challenges I faced here, like I came by myself, I left behind my family, and it was a total different experience for me, like living by yourself, moving into a city, into a place that you have no knowledge about. When I first got here, I was not familiar with the people, with the culture. I almost knew no one here in Norman. That was a challenge for me. And I started like learning everything from the scratch, although I knew the language, but still the culture differences, you are coming from a different culture and you try to integrate and communicate with the people with a different culture, with different perspectives. Sometimes they have no idea about what you went through. That was one of the main challenges. But also one of the good things that I really appreciate about being here. So some of the people who are working with the refugees and the coalition, they were familiar about our situation. They were super helpful. They are still super helpful to us. Like they helped me to get my driver's license, to help me to resettle in here, to know new people which I really appreciate about them. And the other thing that when I started talking to people and explaining that what was the situation looked like in Afghanistan and in which situation we fled our country, I really appreciate the sympathy, the empathy they showed to us. And they like, after 2 years, I can say that now I don't feel to be an outsider. They were so welcoming to me, and that I can now consider myself one of them, but still there is a long way to go to be the part of the society. Yeah.
Thank you, Shabnam. I'm going to turn to Dr. Khalida. Can you hear me? I want to make sure you're on the line. Dr. Khalida, wonderful. I wanted to ask you, you know, you've been in Greece for some time now, but you are in a refugee camp, as you said. Can you talk a little bit more about the challenges you've faced living in the camp and what, you know, what have been positive things that have surprised you, but what are challenges for you and your community as Afghans in Greece?
بزرگترین چالشی که ما به صورت ناگهانی با آن مواجه شدیم، تغییر ناگهانی زندگی و فرهنگ جدید و همچنان بی‌سرنوشتی ما که به مدت 2 سال هست کاملا بی‌سرنوشت.
Thank you. Salma, could you answer the same question for us? What have been your challenges in Pakistan? I was just in Pakistan with my colleague, so I know some of the challenges that Afghans face there, but could you share more about what the challenges your community face, especially because you work with so many Afghan women journalists?
آیا یاسین ورور تاسو ترانسلیټ کوئ دوی ته؟
I think what I said should be translated. Can you understand me, Salma? Or
سلما جان ترانسلیشن ستا ده، تاسو خپل خبرې کوي.
thank you, Pawasha.
ته دا سوال یو دفعه بیا تکرار کوه بخیر ډېر.
وای د ښځو مشکلات په پاکستان کې څه دي؟ تاسو له ژورنالستانو سره هلته کار کوئ یا افغانانو هلته څه اوږده ستونزې دي؟ تاسو څه ستونزې وې؟
په پاکستان کې د ښځو مشکلات بیخي زیات دي، خصوصا دلته په هغه عمده مسایل چې کوم دي که نه هغه د ویزې دي. دلته پاکستانیان چې کله افغانانو ته ویزه ورکوي نو دا په پیسو ده. کله چې دوی ویزې ته درخواست کوي نو دوی نه پیسې غواړي. زیات افغانان پیسې نه لري، نو د همدې وجې نه په دوی باندې زیات جریمه هم راځي او دا مشکلات دي. او بل داسې زیات دلته راغلي دي کومه هیوادونو چې راوستي دي، دوی په دې فکر کې دي چې موږ به نور هیوادونو ته انتقال کی سرنوشت به معلوم شي، خو دا هیڅ معلوم نه ده. د دوی حالات بیخي ناڅرګنده ده او زیات بیکاري. دلته خو افغانان چې کوم کډوال دي دوی خو کار نشي کولی په یو پردي هیواد کې چې دوی ته خو د کار اجازه هم نه وي. دوی له مالي مشکلاتو سره مخ دي، اقتصادي مشکلات. او بل زیات دلته داسې ستونزې هم شته ده چې زیات هغه ستونزې دي چې اقتصادي ستونزې دي. زیاتره مېرمنې داسې دي چې کله ما سره تماس ونیسي ان ژړا کوي، دوی له مالي وایي چې موږ بیخي د خوراک لپاره څه شی لرو نو چې ویې خورو. او هغه هیوادونو چې دوی راوستي دي هغوی ورته انټرویو چې ورسره وکړي مثلا 9 میاشتو کې یا 2 میاشتو کې د دوی لپاره هغه نه معلومیږي، رزلټ نه راځي چې دوی اپروف کړي د دوی ته ویزه ورکړي.
Thank you, Salma. First of all, we're sorry about the interpretation. It seems as though the English interpretation is not working, but we're trying to get that working as soon as possible. Shabnam, can you actually share a little, did you understand Salma, and can you repeat a little bit of what she said in English, because we're having this problem with our translation? Is that possible?
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
Just
I hope
kind
that
of
I can tell
paraphrase,
her.
paraphrase what
Yes.
she said, perhaps, that would be great.
Ms. Salma, I hope I could translate everything she said, but this is what a lot of people in the third country waiting for their destination to go to the Europe or maybe to another country. Their situation is worsening because they even sometimes they complain they don't have enough food in all those countries because they cannot manage the money for all the staffs they need in their daily life up until they get their visas. Sometimes even for getting their Pakistan visa to go to the Pakistan, it's also so much costly. And then maintaining their life in Pakistan, the household, the rent, all the stuff, it's becoming very, for them, it's becoming super expensive, which made it very difficult for them to survive. And even sometimes maintaining their food for them is becoming difficult.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shabnam. Sorry to put you on the spot. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you. And thank you, Salma, for those reflections, because again, like I said, we at Refugees International just went to Pakistan to look into some of these issues, and you certainly explained them well. So another question I want to ask is going back to Palwasha. Now that you are in the United States and have been in the United States for almost 2 years, what do you think in particular the US can do to best help Afghan women and girls both inside of the country and those who are in the diaspora like yourself, especially because, as we know, the US, having been in Afghanistan for so long, has a responsibility to help and do more. What are some of the suggestions you would have for the United States as what they can do to help women and girls, Afghans, both inside and outside of the country?
Thank you, Divan. First of all, speaking about women and all our sisters in Afghanistan, I think they are under the most difficult circumstances. As you know, women are not allowed to go to school or continue education at whatever level. Only primary schooling is allowed. That is like a situation that maybe no other country in the world has for women. We need more support from US and all those countries who have been in Afghanistan for last 2 decades to take some responsibility to keep on negotiating and exerting pressure on Taliban to prevail better human condition for women, to allow to work, study, and continue that their living as a human being, because their treatment is underhuman in Afghanistan. Also, Afghanistan is going under one of unprecedented humanitarian crisis right now. And unfortunately, the humanitarian appeal, which was for Afghanistan, is not fully funded. We need United States and all other countries to help people inside the country to survive, because the current government or the current authority are not taking responsibility for the people of the country, but they need to survive. And women are always poorest of the poor in their family and their situation, and because of all the restrictive policies that Taliban has on them. Also, for all those P1, P2, and SIV cases of men and women or families who are inside Afghanistan and outside of Afghanistan and have been partnered to US, it's a very slow process, and sometimes people are facing high-level threat. My work with MENA List, we are focusing on women political activists and politicians, former MPs and all that. It is not an easy life for all those people who are left and hang out in different destinations in Europe or in Pakistan, and waiting for years now for their cases to be taken serious. We know that there was a wake-up call when one of the MP inside Afghanistan was killed, and we know that they are still in danger. So it's very much important that more help or pressure be put on the process, administrative process of speeding up those cases. And for all those who are even inside United States, we are still living in legal limbo. We don't have a legal status in this country except extension of parole process, status. We need for an integration, for a thinking and setting up a new life. You need to at least be considered that you have no worries about your status. A lot of people are worried and they don't have still that situation as legally being recognized here. And that is a biggest concern among the refugees here in United States.
Thank you, Pawasha. Yes, I think you're exactly right. I mean, again, we're trying to understand in this panel both how people, Afghan women are in limbo in other countries, but also there's not legal status necessarily for Afghan women in the United States, a permanent, stable status that can provide some stability. Shabnam, can you talk a little bit more about what you think, now that you've been in the US for some time, what you think the US needs to do best to help Afghan women and girls inside of Afghanistan, the people you still talk to and are in communication with, and then also people in your community, your Afghan community in the United States?
Well, as a big action, the first step, which I believe that the United States should continue, is to not recognize the group which violates the main rights of women, like education and work, as a legitimate leaders of Afghanistan, that would end imposing them smart sanctions. I don't define what is smart sanction, but smart sanctions that which could affect the people who just violates the human rights and the women rights, but not the main population. In short, and the second would be specifically for women in Afghanistan and the women who are waiting in the third country to come to the United States, is to ease the process of visa, because I know a lot of people trying to get into the States by maybe like student visa, getting scholarships or work or something else. They still have to go to the same process which was supposed to be for a normal situation, which we are not in a normal situation. We are in an emergency situation, waiting for a long time in a third country, in amid a situation, ambiguous situation. They are not sure that if once they get to the Pakistan or the third country, are they able to get the visas or not, which sometimes prevent their family to provide them some basic monies to send them to the third country. And also the process, the amount of time which they were supposed to wait in the normal situation, they also have to wait now. I mean, waiting for a woman now for 2 years inside Afghanistan is totally different from 2010 and 2012, because that time there was a normal situation. But now waiting for 2 years in Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan, or in a third country, is like risking your life. So ease the process. That would help the women a lot to get to their final destination.
Thank you, Shabnam. Dr. Khalida, I want to turn it to you because, again, you are waiting for one of these visas, as Shabnam talked about. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you think needs to happen and how long you've been waiting and what your process looks like? You're on mute. Khalida, thanks.
Yeah, I'm waiting for 2 years in Thessaloniki for my processing application to the USA. But until yet, no good news. We don't have good news. our request to the respected officials of the American government is to speed up the process of our transfer and transfer us to the destination country, so that we cannot start a new life, and we want continue our education for us and our children. They say you are safe, wait, but we are very tired. Wait for the short time, yes. Wait for the 2 years is a long time. Yes, we are safe in the terms of physical security, but we don't have a space of mind. This is very important for us because the time is important. We all have mental and emotional problems here because the organization provide facilities for us in this room, but this is situation we couldn't tolerance for the long time. Just as we can for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, but we don't know what time we can transfer to the destination country. This is the big problem for us here. All of women and the family here have emotional problems because they want the children is not so big and need to started a study. And for the woman Afghanistan, I don't know why all of the government, like American government and the other countries, very be quiet.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, keep going. Sorry. Please continue.
Yeah, this just say we words about the Afghan women, but they don't speak about the Taliban, and they didn't help to the Afghan girl and the woman. We need the help. They couldn't hire our voice in the street, just like a prisoner in that home. This is the difficult situation for the Afghan women. We want from the government, from the board, from the other countries' government find a way for this situation, because just one group died all of the nation of Afghanistan people.
Thank you, Khalida. Those are powerful words. And I think you being in, like you said, one room with the other families in Thessaloniki waiting is really a good example of what we're talking about, that you know, the US and others need to move quicker and then have provide more information. Salma, I'd like to ask you being in Pakistan, can you tell us a little bit more about what you think the US and other Western countries need to do for women and girls, both inside of Afghanistan and those that are outside in neighboring countries?
مس شبانه تاسو دا پښتنه یو ځلې ما ته تکرار کړئ.
هغه وایي چې تاسو اوس په پاکستان کې یاستئ، تاسو د ښځو یا د افغانانو حالت په داخل د افغانستان کې او په دغه همسایه هیوادونو کې څنګه تاسو ارزیابي کوئ او امریکا باید څه کومک وکړي دغو خلکو سره په دغه وضعیت کې؟
په پاکستان کې خو د ښځو حالت ما تاسو ته مخکې مې یادونه وکړله، بیخي ډېر کړکېچن ده. نورو هېوادونو ته پکار ده چې کومې ژمنې دوی کړي دي هغه دوی سره پوره کړي. او بل دا چې زیاتره افغانان چې مثلا په هغه کې د خپله داخل افغانستان کې هغوی ژوند کوي، هغوی مکتبونه او پوهنتونونه کار دوی ته د هېڅ د اجازه نشته چې دوی بیرون ووځي. نو پکار ده چې د هغوی لپاره موږ یو غږ پورته کړو. نورو هېوادونو ته پکار ده د دې ښځو ملاتړ وکړي تر څو وکولی شي دوی مکتبونه او پوهنتونونو ته دوی ولاړ شي ځکه دا غټ مشکل ده په یو هیواد کې چې تعلیم نه وسي هغه به څنګه پرمختګ وکړي او بل د افغانستان کې زیاتره داسې فامیلونه هم شته چې هغوی د کور نه بیرون وتلی نشي او نامحرم نه لري د کور یوازې یو کس وي دوی همغه یو کس وي چې دوی کار کوي هغه هم په کور ناست دي نو زیات مشکلات دي په ګاونډي هیوادونو کې خپله دننه په افغانستان کې
پاکستان په مورد کې دیونه ویل تاسو سره څه کومکونه پکار دي
په پاکستان کې زیاتره افغانان ستونزه د دې لري چې دوی ویزه ترلاسه کړي د بهر هیوادونو کومې ژمنې چې ورسره نور هیوادونو کړي دي دوی منتظر کړي دي خو دوی ته د انټرویو چې ورم کې دوی ته احوال نه ورکول کېږي چې مثلا د تا کیس په کوم حالات کې ده یا کوم ځای ته ستا کیس ورسېدو او بل دا چې دوی چې راغلي دي زیاتره د کار خو په پاکستان کې نشي کولی دوی د خوراکي توکي تر مغه دي نشي پیدا کولی نو د دې ستونزه هم دوی لري او بل زیاتره میرمنې داسې دي که نه چې دلته راغلي دي دوی زیاتو مشکلاتو سره دوی مخ دي حتی دوی نه زیاتره پاکستانیانو پاسپورټونه اخیستي وي د کور کرایه نه لري هغه یې ورڅخه نیولي وي دا هغه مشکلات چې د افغان میرمنې په پاکستان کې ورسره مخ دي او ځینې داسې مشکلات دي چې هغه زه تاسو ته یعنې ویلی نشم بیخي د افغان میرمنو حالات په پاکستان کې بیخي کړکېچن ده نه پوهېږم په ایران او په تاجکستان کې به هم همداسې وي خو په پاکستان کې بیخي خراب ده زیاتره خبریالان نیول کېږي دوی ځورول کېږي ویزه هم لري خو بیا هم دوی نیول کېږي بندیان کېږي کله چې بندیان کېږي دوی نه زیاتره خبریالانو نه دوی پیسې توقع هم کوي دوی ته وایي چې موږ ته پیسې راکړه بیا تاسو خوشي کوو پاکستانیان
Devon, I trust there is a translation, right?
Yes, the translation is working now. So thank you, Salma. We really appreciate your thoughts, and we're glad we can understand them. Those of us who don't speak the language. I want to turn it over to some questions now, in case we have any. And if you don't, I have some more questions to ask. But perhaps in the chat, those of you in the audience who have any questions can ask questions now, because we have a little bit of time left. Otherwise, I'm going to ask a few more questions to the panelists. Okay. Okay. So if we get some questions, I will let you know. But in the meantime, I really wanted to ask you, we've talked now about what your situation is, how you left Afghanistan 2 years ago, each of you, how you're each in different places in different situations, and how today is a very emotional day, how this is a particular, day that is momentous and significant and really changed a lot of things. Palwasha, I'll turn to you. As we mark this 2-year anniversary, this 2-year, recognition of the Taliban takeover, what does this day mean for you? What can you share a little bit more about what this day means for you? And again, your community, and a little bit more about, marking this day and why this is important to do so.
I think this day has been an historical setback on a lot of things, and a lot of civic freedom for everyone, but particularly difficult and let's say a black day for women of Afghanistan, because we lost everything as a human being that we deserve to have. As I said before, it's enough to know that Afghan girls beyond certain age, or as they reach their puberty, they are not allowed to continue education. And I think that can simply reflect what could be the situation of women in that country, where they have, as previously Salma said, when there is no growth, stopping education is like stopping every possible development that a woman can have as a human, and this need to change. Taliban have to realize that women are important human force of the country, that they can take out this country out of the difficult crisis that we are facing. Economically, our country is going in a fall down. We are facing one of the hugest crises, and in this situation, this kind of discrimination is only taking everyone. It's not only stopping women, it is also stopping the country, the nation from progress. We also call on international community that they shouldn't forget Afghanistan. The peace process was done in a way that it only focused on international troops withdrawal or US troop withdrawal. It's important now to turn to the people of Afghanistan, to their needs, to support the humanitarian needs, or plan or appeal, which is happening, help women for alternative education, maybe through homeschooling, online education, several ways possible. And those who are in danger, the kind of women that I'm working on daily basis, and they're highly exposed, as my colleague and was saying, like their pictures are in the billboards. So it can be more exposures than that for them, that they are in danger. They should be helped wherever they are, outside Afghanistan or inside Afghanistan, for their quick humanitarian evacuation, and also immigration process need to be taken more focus and consideration. We need to help Afghans in different countries were based on their need. In Pakistan, it's important that the Pakistani government have the political will to accommodate those people who are leaving the war and maybe life threats in their country, and selling of the visa every 3 months, and after 3 months stopping them and not allowing them to work. So how can they survive? This is what we are hearing story from women like Salma and many other women that we are working. They are in extreme and difficult condition. We need them to be treated as human beings. They are living a conflict inside the country, and they're facing another conflict outside their country.
Thank you, Pawasha. And you mentioned alternative education and finding ways to kind of get around some of these Taliban restrictions and really focus on women and girls and their needs. One of the audience members asked if you all could talk a little bit more about ideas about pressure that could be brought to bear on the Taliban to allow girls' schools to reopen. So, for instance, might they respond to pressure from other Muslim countries or from other religious leaders? And also the question was, are schools for those secondary schools for girls closed all across the country, or are they open in some areas? Maybe you can speak to that and some of the ideas to deal with education.
I think Shabnam before speak very well about the smart sanctions. I don't want to repeat that, but I also think they help women to be part of negotiating for their rights. UN offices are there in Afghanistan, and I've been speaking to many women. They still have, they don't have that possibility to sit on the table with Taliban and negotiate for their rights. I think we need that incomplete peace process between people of Afghanistan and Taliban to happen, and women has that capacity to speak for their rights, but they need facilitation, they need moderation for this purpose, and that should be given to them, because all those women who are living in Afghanistan, they know how to work. Unfortunately, many of the women groups, the agency that women has developed over the years are not supported the way they should be. Some funding direction has opened to women, but still in a different level and a very competitive process for those women who are not speaking English. They don't have the proposal writers because many educated women has left the country, or let's say Western educated, or those who can speak the language of the donors. It's important to help the solution, which is defined by the women inside the country themselves. Localized solutions are the best to suit their needs. They know what they need, but it's important that that need should be given or supported the way they can work for their rights. It's easy, like we're hearing public statement from some critique of women movement abroad and saying that women should find their own ways. But if you are facing a group who is not seeing you as equal, or who is not seeing you even as a human being, it's so difficult to do that. Unless there is a moderation, if there is a facilitation, this cannot happen. But even women who are able to go and sit with them and ask about girls' education, they use different funding and other ways of relief support that they're taking to community to build that kind of negotiation channels that need to be strengthened, that need to be supported.
Thank you, Fawasha. Shabnam, I want to turn over to you for the last minute or two we have. You are a student, you are a graduate student and studying. And again, this question about girls' education, it's so prominent and so important for girls in Afghanistan. Do you have any thoughts about what could be brought to bear to reopen schools and to help girls in Afghanistan be educated, and given what's going on with the Taliban now?
Well, one thing that I really, now we are following the news at what's going on there, and the negotiation sides as well, that one big mistakes that people think that not being fired a single bullet, it's a peace, and now Afghanistan is a peace, and I heard that in some comments that in some points, if it requires the woman to stay at home for some time, it's okay, which is not okay, which is not a peace. We should bring in the table the negotiators, the people who firmly believe that it is not a peace if the half of the population is staying at home, the half of the population is in home prison. They should be convinced that what you guys are doing is not a peace. They had 2 years to, they had 2 years to improve themselves, to show the world that we can be considered as a legitimate government just by letting girls to go to the school. It's nothing, but they are very firm about their decisions, the Taliban. This is because they think that now there is not a civil war in the country. We are not fighting. This is enough, which that should be told to them that's not a peace, that's not enough, and that's not enough to be recognized as a government. And one thing I believe that the negotiation side, representing the women, should firmly believe that on the values and value of education, on the value of the women right and women education. That way, that should be easy to, not easy, it's a difficult task. I know I am still thinking that how to convince a group who don't believe in the very basic rights of women. But at least the negotiation sides, for negotiators from the women's side should firmly believe that the main and most important stuff is letting the half of the population to continue living and release them from the presence, from home presence.
Thank you. I think that's not a wonderful way to end, an important way to end this conversation. I want to thank our panelists so much who joined us from all across the United States and in Greece and Pakistan. We really appreciate it. Hearing from all of you has been incredibly powerful and gives us a lot of issues to think about as we mark this important day. I hope this conversation helps encourage all of the rest of us to learn from and listen to and work on behalf of Afghan women all around the world. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khalida.